What's up EFD, and welcome back to Scout Report. With Man United having endured yet another slow start to the season, let's take a look at what's going wrong at Old Trafford. 5. Tactical naivety. When we released a similar video about Man United back in March, we suggested that hiring Ole Gunnar Solskjaer on a permanent basis represented a risk. And while this point of view didn't go down well at all, it's fair to say that for now at least, we've been proved right. Since that video went live, the Red Devils' form has taken a dramatic dip, with Solskjaer overseeing 11 defeats in 22 games in all competitions. Meanwhile, just 5 victories in that time gives him a win percentage of just 23% since beating PSG in the Champions League, which is quite simply relegation form. In fact, Cardiff City won 26% of their games on the way to going down in 2018-19. Despite this, the alarm bells shouldn't be ringing just yet. United have been mediocre rather than disastrous at the start of the new season, only being eclipsed by an opponent on expected goals once so far. However, while their 1.6 XG per 90 is currently the 4th best in the Prem, that has to be tempered by the fact they've already received 4 penalties, and it's still a step down from their average of 1.8 last term, showing a team which has clearly declined in the last 12 months. One reason for this is the fact that Solskjaer doesn't seem capable of finding an effective plan B in matches. With a side tailor-made for counter-attacking football, almost all of United's success comes on the break, and yet they've averaged 55% possession so far this season, more than in the previous 2 campaigns. The 1-1 draw with Wolves is a case in point. Despite having over 65% of the ball, Ole's side put just 2 shots on target, one of them a penalty. In fact, United's 2 league wins this season have come in games where they have had less possession, whereas they have had the lion's share in the remaining 6. If Solskjaer is serious about challenging for the top 4, he must work out how to effectively unpick a sitting defence. Before we move on to our next section, just a little reminder to subscribe to EuroFootball Daily if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss another video. 4. Zero firepower. The main reason United have struggled to find alternative ways of breaking down the opposition has simply been the fact they lack the necessary tools going forward. While the Red Devils are currently taking 14 shots a match, a slightly better figure than their average for the previous 2 seasons, the quality of their chance creation still leaves a lot to be desired. Minus penalties, their XG currently stands at 9.1, which is worse than Norwich, Aston Villa and bottom-placed Watford. So unsurprisingly, they sit 13th in the Premier League for goals scored, and while all but one of their 9 have been put away by Rashford, James or Martial, one can't help but think that the sale of Romelu Lukaku and the subsequent failure to replace him is hurting the team's output. The Belgian was the club's 2nd top scorer last season with 15 goals in all competitions, and while this isn't what's expected from a £70 million plus striker, his 0.6 expected goals per 90 was actually an improvement on the previous season when he scored 27. Although it was his lack of a touch and unreliability in the build-up which angered United fans rather than a lack of goal-scoring prowess, the fact remains that without Lukaku, Solskjaer no longer has a striker who can bully defenders in the box, making him even more reliant on the counter to win games. So it's somewhat unsurprising that the super quick Daniel James is the side's top scorer from open play so far this season, with 3, the same amount managed by Aston Villa midfielder John McGinn. Meanwhile, the Welshman's XG is less than half that on 1.3, largely owing to the fact that 2 of those strikes were screamers. Put simply, United are just not creating enough good opportunities to win games, especially since the injury to Anthony Martial. The fact that their expected goals from open play is the 4th worst in the league only makes this even more obvious. 3. No depth. Speaking of injuries, Man United haven't had the best of luck with their overall squad this campaign. The Red Devils have already had 11 separate players miss games so far, with 6 of them first-team regulars, which has laid bare the side's severe lack of depth. And when you look at individual cases, it's clear that the absence of the aforementioned Anthony Martial has had a destabilising effect on the club's form. Starting the season at centre-forward, the Frenchman warmed quickly to his new role in Solskjaer's system, grabbing 2 goals and an assist, while also taking nearly 3 shots and completing 3 dribbles a game, with both those metrics significantly better than his average the previous season. But injury struck after just 3 games, meaning that the 23-year-old has only been involved in 38% of United's league matches this campaign. Alarmingly, he has still contributed to 33% of the team's goals. Another figure who has been sorely missed is Paul Pogba, who has been involved in 22% of United's goal output in the league, despite playing less than 2/3 of available game time. And while the absence of the French contingent has clearly hurt the side's effectiveness going forward, further necessitating the use of an old and slow Juan Mata and a frankly disappointing Andreas Pereira, there are also major concerns when it comes to defensive cover. During the summer, Solskjaer got rid of Chris Smalling, Matteo Darmian and Antonio Valencia for a combined €4.5 million and brought in Harry Maguire and Aaron Wan-Bissaka for a combined €142 million. And while both acquisitions have been very positive for the Red Devils' back line, they now have less cover at fullback, meaning error-prone captain Ashley Young has already racked up over 500 minutes of league action on the left and right, following injuries to Luke Shaw and Wan-Bissaka. Unsurprisingly, he's been involved in all three of the side's Prem losses this term and has already picked up 3 yellow cards, the joint most in the squad. Furthermore, Solskjaer's failure to land a central midfielder following the sale of Marouane Fellaini and the loss of Ander Herrera has left him with even less options in the centre of the park. Taking a look at United's bench against Newcastle, it's clear to see how thin on the ground they are. The 7 players, including 4 recent academy graduates, had an average age of 24, despite also containing a 32-year-old Sergio Romero and a 31-year-old Nemanja Matic. While promoting youth is part of Solskjaer's long-term vision, the overall strength of United's squad is arguably at its lowest since the Premier League was established. No wonder they currently look more mid-table than Champions League. 2. Midfield woes. As alluded to in the last section, Man United's midfield is in a sorry state, especially since Ander Herrera upped sticks to Paris. Last term, the Spanish midfielder completed a massive 5.9 tackles and interceptions per 90, by far the best average in the Red Devils squad, and also contributed to 5 goals in the league, more than Alexis Sanchez and just 1 less than Jesse Lingard managed in 250 more minutes. In fact, the only midfielder to top Herrera's goal involvement was top scorer and assist provider Paul Pogba, and Solskjaer is now even more reliant on the former Juventus man. Pogba is currently averaging 2.6 key passes per game, only beaten in the squad by perpetual crosser and corner taker Ashley Young, with Luke Shaw and Marcus Rashford the only other players creating more than 1 chance a match on 1.3. And while Pogba has adapted to this role quite well so far, now completing more long balls a game than ever before on 6.6, his defensive contribution has largely stayed the same. He is currently completing 1.8 tackles and interceptions a match, compared with 1.9 last term. However, at least his ball progression makes up for his lack of defensive responsibility. Whereas before Herrera was able to do most of the mopping up in the midfield, now Wan-Bissaka and Maguire have their work cut out, with almost zero defensive cover in front of them, and this is especially the case when United don't have the forward-thinking Pogba on the field. Against Newcastle, the double pivot of McTominay and Fred were nowhere near quick enough at progressing the ball, with Maguire continually brought out of position to play out from the back, and when possession was lost, the pair weren't great defensively, managing just 5 tackles and interceptions combined. And herein lies the problem. United's midfield is nowhere near combative enough. As a team, they rank 17th in the Prem for completed tackles and are bottom for interceptions, placing lower than Man City in both categories despite averaging 55% possession to their rivals' 61%. How the Old Trafford faithful would kill for a Fernandinho or Bernardo Silva. And these midfield troubles are only exacerbated by Pogba's situation. The €120 million rated man stayed put this summer, but a move to Real Madrid or PSG seems far more feasible in 2020. Then the United midfield will be close to irreparable. 1. Lack of preparation. When Jose Mourinho was sacked in December 2018, the feeling among the Man United fan base and beyond was that the club's hierarchy had finally finished its policy of hiring big-name managers and spending huge amounts in the transfer market as a means for short-term success. The club has now decided to take a more patient approach, and it showed during the 2019 summer window. For example, 21-year-old Aaron Wan-Bissaka was signed for a sizable but reasonable €55 million, while Daniel James came in for €17 million, a low-risk investment which so far is bearing fruit. However, while this activity is generally a sign of improvement in the club's recruitment policy, whether Solskjaer is capable of carrying out a full squad rebuild is another matter. When the Norwegian coach was hired at the end of 2018, it was with the expectation he'd be replaced come the summer, and United fans also anticipated the arrival of a well-qualified director of football to oversee the club's transition. Instead, following a remarkable honeymoon period in which Solskjaer won 14 of his first 17 games in charge, racking up a win percentage of 82%, he was handed a permanent contract. First, this closed the door to Maurizio Pochettino, who had experience of building Tottenham from the bottom up, and also blunted any impetus to find a sporting director, despite Mike Phelan and even Rio Ferdinand being linked with the job. Having wasted 6 months of well-needed planning time, Ed Woodward now has to follow the long-term vision of a man who was initially signed on a short-term basis. And while there's a chance this gamble could eventually pay off, it is nevertheless a massive risk for such a huge club to take. And with the Red Devils set to miss out on Champions League qualification once again, the appeal of Old Trafford for Europe's top talent is at an all-time low. With a figure like Monchi or Paul Mitchell in place, the club could at least rely on someone with the contacts and know-how to bring in quality young players who fit Ollie's system before they're snapped up by other superpowers. As it stands, the club looks set to limit itself to targeting promising Englishmen. Granted, Solskjaer has spent just €159 million on 3 players so far and will need 2 more transfer windows before his squad even begins to take shape. But he will have to strike gold if United are to be taken seriously again in the next couple of years, and whether he can buy enough time to carry out this project properly is another matter entirely. So those were our 5 reasons why Man United are failing, but what did you make of it? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, why not go and check out Stat Wars The League, which is hotting up right now, and as always, don't forget to like and subscribe.